Hey, welcome back to my pasty face. Good morning wherever and whenever you are. Today I'm going to share with you two book recommendations. I won't call them reviews. I've tried a few times to film book reviews, and it doesn't seem to. My brain gear doesn't seem to be compatible with providing insightful and entertaining book reviews. So instead I'll try just recommending them. I don't know what the difference of that between those are. I can't stop fiddling. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to review, I don't have a physical copy. It's gone back to the library. There were a heap of reserves on it after me, which is a good sign. It is Educated by Tara Westover. The cover is in the thumbnail of the video in case you needed to see what it looks like. Educated is a memoir piece. It covers Tara's life from childhood through to I think about her mid-20s. It's arranged chronologically and in 3 parts. There's a couple of important text add-ons, I guess the author's note at the start, and there's also, after the acknowledgements, there are some notes and also a note on the text. All important reads. Tara grew up in rural Idaho in the USA, family headed by a untreated bipolar man, her father. They were preppers for end of days, didn't believe in formal education and did not believe in modern medicine. And it follows, I guess, or describes Tara's upbringing and then discusses her filling with fluff. I cannot help myself. Her eventual education, which after entering into a college, she ends up eventually at Cambridge. It's a really incredible story, and I'm recommending it today for several reasons. I might try and step through some of the parts. One of the things actually that stood out to me as to why this was such a satisfying read, I've just started drafting another novel, and in doing so I look around at different story structures to help me apply the brain mess of ideas to something that might eventually be a satisfying read. And I guess one of the things, while Educated is definitely non-fiction, it's a memoir piece, there are similarities I saw in, I guess, the gold standard for storytelling, where you have a character at the beginning having a level of ignorance and being mostly comfortable, but something's not quite right. Gaining knowledge eventually and being highly uncomfortable and not quite able yet to overcome the challenges. And then, ideally, sorry, my dog Indy, she's 16 and a half, and she has bite my hand because she wants some attention. Eventually overcoming that challenge. And I see similarities for that in Educated, where you have a child being indoctrinated and learning what they need to do and accept and what they need to believe about themselves in order to survive in the family unit. Coming along, I guess, with age, but also in having experiences or relationships with people outside the family unit, is starting to see, I guess, from others and feel within herself that things aren't right or don't feel right, and then eventually having that knowledge and finding ways to overcome it and finding ways to, I guess, describe herself to herself. I think that is a big part of why it is such a satisfying read. The content is really challenging. It's fucked up. There's a lot of abuse and neglect and I guess torture. There's, for a family that don't believe in modern medicine and some severe accidents which are just negligence, there are scenes that are torture. So it's really hard content, but it left me in such a positive place and really honestly moved. I'll get to that. One of the things, I guess, one of the reasons that I'm recommending Educated is the writing style. I find, considering the content, I have a pretty sensitive sensitive brain, in the sense that I can't read horror. I couldn't watch Game of Thrones. If there's multiple sensory inputs that are quite violent, can't do it. Even in just text, if the content is of a traumatic nature, if it's written very evocatively, I can't get through it. It just overwhelms me. Tara's writing style was very matter of fact. It was, this is how I live, this is how it was for me. And because of that, perhaps maybe unconsciously because I knew that she got out in the end, but it was very readable. It wasn't, the scenes were traumatic, but it wasn't a traumatizing read for me. Having said that, there is content there that could become quite distressing, so it would require perhaps a little bit of research into seeing what sort of, I guess, warnings are in place for this work. In part 1, I have a quote which I don't think was actually from part 1, but I think it sums up the beginning of the challenge really well. My life was narrated to me by others. Their voices were forceful, emphatic, absolute. It had never occurred to me that my voice might be as strong as theirs. I guess given the nature of the family, there was so much that I haven't experienced, but as with everything, there's always this common thread of humanity. And for me, this quote sums it up really well, the one that I identified with. It's strange how you give the people you love so much power over you, I had written in my journal. But Sean, that's her brother, had more power over me than I could possibly have imagined. He had defined me to myself, and there is no greater power than that. I really identified with that. I think I have experiences growing up where a lot of my struggle sort of centers around that sort of a concept, or that having happened. And it really bonded me to the story. It was interesting, I guess, seeing it from a different perspective and with completely different severity. But yeah, it is a fascinating insight. Tara is obviously, knowing that she gets to Cambridge in the end, she's highly intelligent. The level of insight and the difficulty that she faces despite her intellect, and how conditioned you can become to accept and to believe you deserve certain things and to not challenge them and to retain loyalty to your abusers. Another quote that I love, which is, I guess, a turning point for her, was, "The skill I was learning was a crucial one, the patience to read things I could not yet understand." Another thing I love about Educated, and reason that I recommend it, is that it is such a fierce tale of success and overcoming adversity. She's very humble about it. There's a couple of quotes that she makes in relation to finances, like curiosity is, I forget, something about the privilege of the wealthy, and having money. She was able to experience what the best, I guess, benefit of it is not having to think about money. So she's not, anybody can do what I do. It's not like that. It's just a really humble and personal story about how she came from a prepper family who didn't believe in education. They didn't even have birth certificates for her. It was a fight just to get her birth registered. So in part 2, she begins, she's helped by one of her older brothers who was an anomaly in the family, also had a serious intellect. He left and was educated, and then encouraged her to do the same. How she goes about getting her education is incredible. Another reason I recommend the read. It's really inspiring, and it's a beautiful demonstration of the fighting spirit in people. I loved it. Part 3 was perhaps even the hardest part for me to read, because this is when the, I guess, gaslighting, which I suppose a lot of people have experienced, it's all on show, and it's really a tough read, and it's kind of harrowing because it's, I guess, witnessing Tara struggle with her loyalty and her, despite everything, her desire just to be able to have a family. And these are 2 quotes from part 3, which I'll end my recommendation on. I could have my mother's love, but there were terms, the same terms they had offered me 3 years before, that I trade my reality for theirs, that I take my own understanding and bury it, leave it to rot in the earth. And all I had to do was swap my memories for theirs, and I could have my family. I recommend Educated to everybody, with the caveat that there is content which could trigger PTSD, and so have a look into it before. I've passed it on to Cameron to read. He inhaled it and has recommended it to people himself. It's that kind of book. The hype, I went into it with expectations, considering the hype around it and the high review, and I wasn't disappointed, which is a pretty good feat for a book, really. Moving on to my second, I do have a physical copy of this, The Glare. It is Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. It's a YA novel, and I absolutely adore it. It is an easy 5-star. It was an easy 5-star rating for me. One thing that I love, I can't go past the physical copy of the book. It is tiny and fat and gorgeously illustrated. There's illustrations. The text, the prose is presented in a way which is non-standard. There are all sorts of goodies, text messages, poems, pictures, thought bubbles. It's just not thought bubbles. I made that bit up. Black Flamingo follows, it's Michael's story. It follows his, acceptance of himself as a mixed race gay teen. Goes from, I think, about 6 years old through to university, where he becomes a drag artist. It is everything that I wanted in a book. Didn't see it coming. Bright colours freak me out in books, and it was a little bit pink for me, but I'm so glad that I grabbed it anyway. It is own voice, which means that it is so fantastically real that even as a person layered in white hetero cis privilege, it was just so consumable. I loved it. Some of the things that stood out to me beyond the actual physical copy, their voice. Being able to write somebody from the age of 6 up until university is a feat. Dean manages it so simply. It is convincingly Michael all the way through, up through the ages. So it is just, and for that, I guess for that amount of time to pass in this shorter pages, considering how sparsely worded they are, it's a feat, and it is absolutely a journey. It follows, I guess, some heavy stuff, including race and sexuality and gender pressures from society and within families, where things are established pretty early on that there's like a sense of you're wrong, you're not supposed to want Barbies, you're not supposed to dress like this or do this. But it's got some fantastic stuff about internalized homophobia and also the impacts of racism. I love it because it demonstrates different ways of talking about it, different approaches. I love Michael's commitment. He's so courageous to be able to pursue who he is so fearlessly in the face of, groups needing, where he's left with the experience that he's not black enough, or he's not Greek enough, or he's not queer enough. Where am I going? I just love it. I absolutely adore, his commitment to being himself. Even when he becomes a drag artist, it's like, are you a king or a queen? He's like, I'm going to be me. You're not going to shave your beard. Are you not even changing your appearance? What are you do? I don't want to have to shave my beard. I'm me. This is how I'm doing it. It's fucking amazing. It covers also really interesting friendships and sexual encounters. I consumed this. Also, Cameron read it, and his sister Adelaide read it while she was here, and yeah, both her and I are like, we are buying copies for people. It is fantastic. Easy 5 stars. I recommend it to everybody. It's a beautiful read. The prose is lovely. Prose is lovely? I don't know. I don't speak lovely. Prose is gorgeous. The book is gorgeous. The content is important and not didactic at all. The story is compelling. The ending is fabulous. There's some spoken word pieces. It's just, yeah, I love it. I hope you check it out. I'm going to stop it there. I'm clocking up a few minutes. I've got 4 more books sitting beside me, but I will do them in separate videos. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a great couple of weeks. I hope you've been reading great books. If you haven't, try one of these. And if you have, and I haven't, well, of course I haven't, I'm a newbie. There's no other videos. But if you've got any recommendations for me, put them down below. Don't forget to like me, and I'll see you in a few, well, I won't see you, but I'll put my face back up in a few weeks. Days? Weeks? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, thanks for joining me. Bye.